Imagine a map, not some clean, digital satellite image you'd pull up on your phone. An old map, ink on vellum, edges burned, salt-stained. The kind of map where entire coastlines are drawn wrong because the cartographer had never actually been there. He just listened to a drunk sailor describe it from memory. Now, imagine that somewhere on this map, there's a marking, a small X, or maybe a series of cryptic symbols pointing to an island that doesn't appear on any official chart. An island that moves. An island that the Spanish called Isla de Muerta, the Island of the Dead. You've heard that name before. Pirates of the Caribbean made it famous. A cursed island hidden in fog, filled with Aztec gold, guarded by undead pirates. Great movie. But here's the part that never made it into the movie. The Isla de Muerta wasn't invented by Disney screenwriters. It was a real legend, and the islands it was based on, they actually exist. Some of them still have treasure buried on them, and a few of those treasures have never been found. This is the story of the real islands where pirates hid their loot, from the Caribbean to the Pacific, from Nova Scotia to Costa Rica. These places aren't fiction, they're coordinates on a map, and the gold, silver, and jewels buried on them represent hundreds of millions of dollars in today's money. Some of these treasures have been recovered, most haven't. And the people who went looking for them? A disturbing number of them never came back. Let's start where the legend begins. The original Isla de Muerta legend comes from Spanish colonial sailors in the 16th and 17th centuries. And to understand why they believed in a disappearing island, you have to understand what sailing the Caribbean was actually like in the 1600s. There was no GPS, there were no accurate charts. Navigation was done with a compass, a quadrant, and a whole lot of guesswork. Longitude, the east-west measurement that tells you where you are on the globe, couldn't be reliably calculated at sea until the 1760s when John Harrison invented the marine chronometer. That means for the entire golden age of piracy, roughly 1650 to 1730, every single ship in the Caribbean was operating with incomplete information about where they were. Islands appeared and disappeared depending on weather, currents, and how badly your navigator had miscalculated. Low-lying islands vanished behind fog banks. Coral atolls visible at low tide disappeared at high tide. Volcanic islands produced haze that made them invisible from certain angles. So when Spanish sailors reported an island that moved or couldn't be found again, they weren't being superstitious. The Caribbean is filled with over 7,000 islands, cays, and reefs. Many of them are barely above sea level. Some genuinely do disappear underwater during storms and reappear weeks later. The name Isla de Muerta likely referred to multiple locations. Any island that a crew couldn't relocate became an island of the dead in sailor slang. But the legend coalesced around a specific idea, that somewhere in the Caribbean there was an island so remote, so hidden, so impossible to find unless you already knew where it was, that pirates used it as a vault, a natural bank, a place to stash the kind of wealth that would get you killed if anyone found out you had it. And that idea wasn't fantasy. Pirates absolutely did hide treasure on islands. The question is which islands, and whether anything is still there. Let's start with the most famous treasure island in the world, not because it's the most likely to hold pirate gold, but because it's consumed more lives, more money, and more obsession than any other treasure hunt in history. Oak Island sits in Mahone Bay, off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada. It's small, about 140 acres, shaped roughly like a question mark, which feels almost too perfect given what's happened there. In 1795, a teenager named Daniel McGinnis was exploring the island when he found something strange, a circular depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree. The tree had a tackle block, a pulley used on ships, hanging from one of its branches. Below the depression, the soil had clearly been disturbed. Someone had dug here and filled it back in. McGinnis came back with two friends, John Smith and Anthony Vaughan, and they started digging. At 2 feet down, they hit a layer of flagstones. At 10 feet, a platform of oak logs. At 20 feet, another platform of oak logs. At 30 feet, the same thing. They couldn't go deeper without equipment, so they stopped. But word got out. Before we go any further, I need to stop for a second, because what I've been showing you in these videos only scratches the surface. And I realized at some point that the full picture, the actual pirate code, word for word, the real punishment records, the exact treasure division shares, the ports that secretly funded them, it doesn't fit in a video. I put it all into one document, the Black Flag Codex. It's linked below, and the QR code is on your screen. Now, let's keep going. And that was the beginning of a 230-year treasure hunt that has killed 6 people and cost millions of dollars. Over the decades, excavation companies have dug deeper and deeper into what became known as the money pit. At 40 feet, they found a layer of charcoal. At 50 feet, putty. At 60 feet, coconut fiber, which is significant because coconut palms don't grow anywhere near Nova Scotia. Someone brought that material there from the tropics. At 90 feet, according to early accounts, diggers found a flat stone with strange symbols carved into it. Multiple people claim to have seen it. A professor at Dalhousie University reportedly translated the symbols as reading, 40 feet below, 2 million pounds are buried. That stone has since disappeared. Nobody knows where it is. And then the water came. At around 93 feet, the pit flooded completely. Every attempt to pump it out failed because more water kept rushing in. Later investigation revealed that whoever built the pit had constructed an elaborate system of flood tunnels connecting to the ocean. When you dug past a certain depth, seawater was channeled in through these tunnels to fill the shaft. Think about that for a second. Someone didn't just dig a deep hole and drop treasure in it. They engineered a hydraulic booby trap. They built drainage channels hundreds of feet long, lined them with coconut fiber as a filter, connected them to the ocean at specific tidal levels, and designed the entire thing so that anyone who dug deep enough would trigger a flood that would bury the treasure under pressurized seawater. That's not something a crew of pirates throws together in an afternoon. That's an engineering project. And it raises the question, who built it, and what were they protecting? Theories range from Captain Kidd's lost hoard to the lost jewels of Marie Antoinette to manuscripts proving Francis Bacon wrote Shakespeare's plays. The Lagina brothers have been excavating the island since 2006 and starring in a History Channel show about it since 2014. They've found colonial-era coins, fragments of parchment, gold-plated metal, and various artifacts dating back centuries. But the big treasure, if it exists, remains unfound. 6 people have died on Oak Island during treasure hunts. Local legend says 7 must die before the island gives up its secret. Whether you believe in curses or not, that's a hell of a track record for a 140-acre island in Canada. Now let's talk about a treasure we know existed because we know exactly where it came from and roughly how much it was worth. The question is where it ended up. In 1820, Peru was in the middle of a war of independence against Spain. The Spanish colonial authorities in Lima, the capital, were panicking. Revolutionary forces were closing in. The viceroy made a decision: load the city's wealth onto ships and get it out before the rebels could seize it. And when I say the city's wealth, I mean all of it. The treasury of Lima included gold and silver bars, coins, jeweled swords, gem-encrusted religious statues including a life-sized solid gold Virgin Mary, hundreds of gold and silver chalices from the cathedral, and chests of uncut precious stones. Conservative, modern estimates put the total value at around $200 million to $300 million. Some estimates go as high as $1 billion. The Spanish loaded this treasure onto several ships, one of which was a British merchant vessel called the Mary Dear, captained by a Scottish sailor named William Thompson. Thompson was supposed to sail the treasure to Mexico for safekeeping. Instead, he and his crew murdered the Spanish guards aboard, threw their bodies overboard, and sailed for the Pacific coast of Costa Rica. Specifically, they sailed for Cocos Island. Cocos Island is about 340 miles off the coast of Costa Rica, roughly in the middle of nowhere. It's volcanic, covered in dense jungle, riddled with caves and waterfalls, and surrounded by dangerous currents. It's also uninhabited. In 1820, it was one of the most remote islands in the Pacific that could still be reliably located by a competent navigator. Thompson and his crew buried the Lima treasure somewhere on the island. The exact location has never been confirmed. Thompson was eventually captured by a Spanish warship, and his entire crew was executed for piracy. Thompson and his first mate were spared because they agreed to lead the Spanish back to the treasure. But when they arrived at Cocos Island, Thompson and his mate escaped into the jungle. The Spanish searched the island but found nothing. Thompson's first mate died on the island. Thompson himself eventually made it back to civilization, but he never returned for the treasure. On his deathbed, he reportedly gave a map and instructions to a friend named John Keating. Keating claimed to have visited the island and recovered some of the treasure, but the bulk of it, by his own account, was still hidden in a cave system that he couldn't fully access alone. Since then, more than 300 expeditions have searched Cocos Island. Franklin Roosevelt visited 3 times. A German adventurer named August Gissler lived on the island for 17 years, searching full-time. He found a handful of gold coins. That's it. Costa Rica declared the island a national park in 1978, partly to control treasure hunters who were destroying the ecology. The treasure is either still there or it was recovered by someone who never reported it. Either way, Cocos Island remains one of the most tantalizing unsolved treasure mysteries in the world. Here's where the history gets weird. The entire concept of buried pirate treasure was popularized by fiction. Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island, published in 1883, cemented the idea that pirates buried their loot on remote islands and drew maps to find it later. In reality, most pirates didn't bury their treasure. They spent it. Piracy was not a retirement plan. It was a short, violent career, and the men who practiced it tended to blow through their earnings on alcohol, gambling, and women as fast as they could. But there is one confirmed, historically verified case of a pirate burying treasure on an island, and that pirate was Captain William Kidd. Kidd was a Scottish sailor who was originally hired by the English crown to hunt pirates. He was given a letter of marque, essentially a government license to attack enemy ships and split the profits with his investors, who included members of Parliament and even the Lord Chancellor of England. The problem was that Kidd's crew grew restless when they couldn't find suitable targets. Eventually, in 1698, Kidd seized an Armenian merchant ship called the Quetta Merchant in the Indian Ocean. The ship was carrying satins, muslins, gold, silver, and other goods worth an estimated $13 million in today's currency. Kidd claimed the ship was a legitimate prize because it was sailing under French passes, making it an enemy vessel. His investors back in London disagreed. Political winds had shifted. Piracy was becoming a public scandal. Kidd's backers needed a scapegoat, and Kidd was it. Knowing he was about to be arrested, Kidd sailed to Gardiner's Island, a privately owned island off the eastern tip of Long Island, New York. He met with John Gardiner, the island's proprietor, and asked him to hold a chest of treasure. Gardiner agreed, possibly under duress, possibly in exchange for gifts that Kidd gave to Gardiner's wife, including a length of gold cloth. Kidd then sailed to Boston, where he was arrested, sent to London, tried for piracy and murder, and hanged in 1701. His body was coated in tar and displayed in an iron cage over the Thames as a warning to other pirates. The treasure on Gardiner's Island was recovered almost immediately by colonial governor Lord Bellamont. It included gold dust, silver bars, rubies, diamonds, and other precious stones. The inventory was well documented. But here's the thing. It only accounted for a fraction of what Kidd had stolen. The Quetta merchant's cargo was worth millions. The Gardiner's Island chest was worth maybe $100,000 in today's money. So where did the rest go? Some historians believe Kidd buried additional caches on other islands along the eastern seaboard. Block Island, Liberty Island, and spots along the Connecticut coast have all been proposed. None have been confirmed. Gardiner's Island itself is still privately owned by the Gardiner family, who don't allow treasure hunters on the property. Whatever else might be buried there remains undisturbed. Stop for a second. What you just heard about the pirate code is the part that rewrites everything you thought you knew. But it only lands when you see the actual shares, the exact fractions written into the Articles of Agreement, the punishments, the port records, the names of the men who funded them from government offices. It's all in the Black Flag Codex, linked in the description. 5 seconds. Grab it now, because what comes next builds directly on it. Link is below. QR code is on your screen. Off the southern coast of Cuba lies the second largest island in the Cuban archipelago. Today it's called Isla de la Juventud, the Isle of Youth. But for most of its history, it was known by a different name, Isla de Pinos, the Isle of Pines. And before that, the Spanish called it La Evangelista. Pirates called it something else entirely. They called it the place where you went when you needed to disappear. The island sits at a strategic crossroads of Caribbean shipping lanes. Ships traveling between Mexico, Central America, and Cuba had to pass nearby. For pirates operating in the Western Caribbean, it was perfectly positioned. Close enough to major trade routes to be useful, remote enough to avoid Spanish naval patrols. Sir Francis Drake used it as a staging ground. Henry Morgan reportedly cached supplies there between raids. And the island's geography made it ideal for hiding things. The southern half is covered in marble caves, some of them extending hundreds of feet underground. The coastline is broken up by mangrove swamps that make approach by sea nearly impossible, unless you know exactly where the channels are. Robert Louis Stevenson reportedly based his fictional treasure island on Isla de Pinos. The geography matches his descriptions closely: the general shape of the island, the hills visible from the sea, the swampy interior. Stevenson had access to navigational charts of the Caribbean, and the Isle of Pines appears on all of them. Multiple treasure caches have been found on the island over the centuries. Farmers plowing fields turned up Spanish coins. A cave system on the southern coast contained human remains alongside rusted cutlasses and fragments of sea chests. In the 1950s, American treasure hunters reportedly found a small cache of gold bars in one of the marble caves, though the Cuban government has never confirmed it. Today, the island is a municipality of Cuba. The caves are a tourist attraction. If there's still treasure buried in those marble chambers, it belongs to the Cuban state. 15 men on a dead man's chest, yo-ho-ho, and a bottle of rum. You know the song. Everyone knows the song. But Dead Man's Chest is a real island. It sits in the British Virgin Islands, about midway between the islands of Peter and Tortola. It's tiny, barely 5 acres, no fresh water, no trees, just rock, scrub brush, and a single flat area near the shore. According to local legend, the infamous pirate Edward Teach, known as Blackbeard, marooned 15 of his crew on this island as punishment for attempting mutiny. He left them with nothing but a single bottle of rum, each, and a cutlass. No food, no water, and no shade. The story goes that when Blackbeard returned a month later, the survivors had gone mad. Some had died of dehydration. Others had killed each other. The ones still alive were barely recognizable as human beings. Whether this specific story is true is debated by historians. Marooning was a real punishment used by pirates. It was considered worse than death because it was slow. You didn't just die. You watched yourself die, day by day, under a sun that never stopped. What is true is that Dead Man's Chest was used by pirates as a rendezvous point and possibly as a temporary cache location. Its position in the Virgin Islands chain made it easy to locate by experienced sailors, and its total lack of resources meant that nobody lived there and nobody had any reason to visit. If you wanted to stash something and come back for it later, you could be reasonably confident it would still be there. Stevenson borrowed the island's name for his novel. The island is now uninhabited and protected as part of the British Virgin Islands National Park System. No treasure has ever been confirmed found there, but nobody has ever conducted a serious, systematic search either. The island is so small and barren that treasure hunters have dismissed it as too obvious. Why would a pirate hide treasure on an island everyone already associates with pirates? Then again, sometimes the best hiding spots are the ones nobody bothers to check. In 1715, a fleet of 11 Spanish ships left Havana Harbor, heading for Spain. They were loaded with the accumulated wealth of the New World: gold, silver, pearls, emeralds, Chinese porcelain that had been traded across the Pacific, and coins, millions and millions of coins. The fleet's combined cargo was worth an estimated $2 billion in today's money. It was one of the richest convoys ever assembled. 7 days into the voyage, a hurricane hit the fleet off the coast of Florida. All 11 ships sank. Over 1,000 sailors drowned. The treasure scattered across the ocean floor along a stretch of coastline that is now known, appropriately enough, as the Treasure Coast. This wasn't an island burial. The ocean itself became the vault. But what happened next involves islands. Spanish salvage crews recovered some of the treasure in the months after the disaster, but they couldn't get all of it. The wrecks were spread across miles of shallow water, and the work was dangerous and slow. And then the pirates came. Henry Jennings, an English privateer turned pirate, learned about the Spanish salvage operation and attacked it. He raided the salvage camp on the beach, stole 350,000 pieces of eight, roughly $50 million worth, and sailed for the Bahamas. The stolen treasure was reportedly distributed among several pirate crews who used the islands of the Bahamas as hideouts. Nassau, on New Providence Island, was effectively a pirate republic at the time. But the smarter pirates didn't keep their share in Nassau, where it could be stolen by other pirates. They cached it on smaller, less populated islands throughout the chain. To this day, treasure from the 1,715 fleet continues to wash up on Florida beaches after storms. In 2015, a family of treasure hunters found $4.5 million worth of gold coins from the fleet in shallow water near Fort Pierce. In 2024, a salvage company recovered additional artifacts from one of the wreck sites. The portion that Jennings stole and distributed through the Bahamas, that's a different story. Some of those caches have surely been found over the centuries without being reported. Others may still be sitting in limestone caves on islands throughout the archipelago. The Bahamas have over 700 islands. Most of them have never been systematically searched. Staying in the British Virgin Islands, let's talk about Norman Island. This one is particularly interesting because it connects real treasure to famous fiction in a way that can actually be verified. In 1750, a Spanish treasure ship called the Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe was plundered by pirates near the coast of North Carolina. The ship was carrying a large quantity of silver coins. The pirates took the loot and scattered. According to historical records, some of the pirates made their way to the British Virgin Islands and hid their share of the Guadalupe's treasure in caves on an uninhabited island. That island was Norman Island. In the 1820s, treasure was actually found there. Locals discovered chests of silver coins in the sea caves that line Norman Island's western shore. The coins were identified as Spanish colonial currency, consistent with what the Guadalupe would have been carrying. Stevenson almost certainly knew about Norman Island. The story was well documented in the Caribbean by the time he was writing Treasure Island in the early 1880s. Today, Norman Island is privately owned and popular with day trippers from Tortola. The sea caves, known locally as the Caves, are a snorkeling spot where visitors swim into caverns where pirates once stashed stolen Spanish silver. Whether treasure remains in the deeper, less accessible portions of the cave system is unknown. The caves extend much farther back than snorkelers typically go, and the deeper sections have never been fully explored. On the border between Florida and Georgia sits Amelia Island. It's 13 miles long, and over the course of its history, it has flown 8 different flags, more than any other territory in America. Spanish, French, British, Patriots, Green Cross of Florida, Mexican, Confederate, and American. That kind of jurisdictional chaos was exactly what pirates loved. For most of the 18th century, Amelia Island was a no-man's land. Spain technically owned it, but couldn't effectively patrol it. Smugglers, privateers, and outright pirates used it as a base of operations. Louis Aury, a French privateer, actually established a pirate government on the island in 1817, complete with his own legal system and port authority. The island's geography helped. It sits at the mouth of the St. Mary's River, and ships could duck into the waterway to escape pursuit, while the extensive marsh system provided dozens of hiding spots. The most persistent treasure legend involves John Lafitte, who reportedly buried treasure on the island's northern end. Lafitte operated throughout the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean, and his treasure has been found on at least 15 different islands, depending on which legend you believe. In 2011, metal detectors turned up Spanish colonial coins dating to the early 1800s. Larger caches may still exist beneath the island's shifting sand dunes, but residential development has made large-scale excavation impossible. Off the northeast coast of Madagascar lies a narrow island about 35 miles long. Today, it's called Nosy Boraha, but for centuries, it was known by its French colonial name, Ile Sainte-Marie, and during the late 1600s and early 1700s, it was the pirate capital of the Indian Ocean. The Caribbean gets all the attention when it comes to pirate history, but the Indian Ocean was arguably more lucrative. The trade routes between India, Arabia, and East Africa carried spices, silk, precious stones, and gold. Muslim pilgrimage ships traveling to Mecca often carried wealthy passengers with their life savings. The Mughal Empire's treasure ships were legendary. Pirates like Henry Every, Thomas Tew, and William Kidd all operated in the Indian Ocean, and many of them used Ile Sainte-Marie as their home base. The island had everything a pirate needed: a protected harbor, fresh water, fertile soil, a local population willing to trade, and enough distance from any colonial power that the Royal Navy couldn't easily reach it. At its peak, Ile Sainte-Marie was home to over 1,000 pirates. They built houses, married local women, and created a functioning community that some historians have called the only successful pirate utopia in history. When pirates retired or died on the island, their accumulated wealth often stayed there. Some of it was hidden deliberately, and some was simply lost, as the jungle reclaimed abandoned settlements. In the early 2000s, underwater archaeologists found what they believed to be the wreck of Captain Kidd's ship, the Adventure Galley, in the shallow waters off Ile Sainte-Marie. The discovery generated enormous excitement and significant controversy, with some experts questioning the identification. The island itself has never been systematically excavated for treasure. The jungle is dense, the terrain is difficult, and the government of Madagascar has limited resources for archaeological research. Whatever the pirates of the Indian Ocean left behind on Ile Sainte-Marie, it's likely still there, slowly being swallowed by the forest. Here's what connects all of these islands, from Oak Island to Cocos Island to Ile Sainte-Marie. The pattern is always the same. First, the island has to be remote enough that casual visitors won't stumble on the cache, but not so remote that the pirate can't find it again. Second, it needs a distinctive geographical feature: a cave, a specific rock formation, a unique tree, something that can serve as a landmark for someone who knows what to look for, but means nothing to someone who doesn't. Third, it needs to be positioned near a major shipping lane. Pirates didn't sail thousands of miles out of their way to hide treasure. They cached it close to where they operated, so they could retrieve it quickly when they needed it. And fourth, And this is the part that explains why so much treasure has never been found. It needs to be the kind of place where the landscape changes. Hurricanes reshape coastlines. Earthquakes collapse caves. Jungles consume clearings. An island that looked one way in 1720 might look completely different today. That's the real curse of pirate treasure. It's not a supernatural hex, it's time. The landmarks that pirates use to mark their caches, the distinctive trees, the unusual rock formations, the specific beaches, those features erode, grow over, collapse, and disappear. The treasure might still be exactly where it was buried, but the map that led to it no longer matches the territory. Conservative estimates suggest that between $1 billion and $3 billion in pirate-era treasure remains unfound across the Caribbean, Atlantic, and Indian Ocean. That includes the Lima treasure, Captain Kidd's unaccounted takings, the scattered caches of the 1,715 fleet, and dozens of smaller hoards buried by pirates whose names never made the history books. Modern technology is changing the game. Ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR, magnetometers, and DNA analysis are all being deployed at treasure sites around the world. But technology also raises uncomfortable questions. If you find a treasure cache on a sovereign nation's territory, who does it belong to? In 2007, Odyssey Marine Exploration pulled $500 million worth of silver coins from a shipwreck off Portugal. Spain sued, the case went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and Spain won. Every coin returned. The legal landscape has become so complicated that the cost of litigation and permits often exceeds the value of what you might find. And yet, people keep looking. Every year, amateurs show up on Cocos Island with shovels and dreams. Metal detector enthusiasts comb Florida's Treasure Coast after every storm. Divers explore cave systems throughout the Caribbean, looking for gold in the silt. They keep looking because the math, against all reason, still works. Every few years, someone finds something. A chest of coins, a gold bar, a jeweled artifact. Just enough to keep the dream alive. Just enough to justify one more expedition, one more dive, one more shovel in the sand. The islands are still there. The treasure might be too. And somewhere out there, on an island that keeps moving, that keeps disappearing behind fog and reappearing in a different location, the Isla de Muerta is waiting. The question is whether you're brave enough or foolish enough to go looking.